Welcome to the final Worksite Wellness series that we've done this summer. We have pulled today's lesson from Taking Care of You, which you can find on extension.missouri.edu, available year-round as a virtual class. So today will just be a taste of it, and we're going to be talking about stress management. How are you doing right now? The standard answer, even to ourselves, is probably fine or good. Most of us say this in about 1 or 2 seconds. But have you honestly checked in with you to see how you're doing today? Most of the time, you're so focused on the view out that you forget to check in with yourself so you can take care of you. The average person looks without seeing, listens without hearing, touches without feeling, eats without tasting, moves without physical awareness, inhales without awareness of odor or fragrance, and talks without thinking. We call this being in a state of mindlessness or being on automatic pilot. You're in a sense of living mechanically, or you're living in the past or the future. It's also a sense of a separation from yourself, like you're just sleepwalking through life. We have many demands on our time, and we're expected to do everything well, like balance work and family, care for an aging parent, or get children to various activities. Life can be busy. Life can be unfair. Life can be wonderful. Regardless of the stress in our lives, it can all be overwhelming at times, especially when we overextend ourselves to meet the demands of life. How much does stress actually cost us? According to the American Psychological Association, an estimated $300 billion is spent on medical expenses related to stress each year. This demonstrates how stress affects each part of your life, not just physical health. Again, according to the American Psychological Association, chronic stress is linked to the 6 leading causes of death, and more than 75% of all physician office visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. How does stress affect your emotions? You might get sad or angry easily. You might feel like your life is out of control. You may feel guilty or like you're a failure. Maybe you're anxious, easily annoyed, or jealous of others all the time. Or maybe you're depressed or resentful. These emotions can also lead to physical reactions. When we are stressed, we often go on autopilot. This means we're not aware of what we're doing or feeling or what messages our bodies are trying to send to us. By being more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and body sensations, we allow ourselves the opportunity to respond to situations with choice rather than by reacting automatically. Understanding some key areas of your brain that deal with memory, thinking, and reactions will help us be better stress managers. Have you ever had that little voice in your head telling you not to do something? These thoughts are controlled by the prefrontal cortex. It is the area of the brain that regulates our urges and knee-jerk reactions. It is responsible for helping us make smart decisions by analyzing the situation before us. When we're not thinking clearly, it is because our prefrontal cortex is taking a break or has been pushed out of the way by the emotional area of the brain, which we will discuss shortly. In order to re-engage the prefrontal cortex, we have to think rationally, not emotionally. The brain can't do 2 things at once. It cannot think logically while in an agitated state. The hippocampus is where general memory and spatial memory is received, categorized, and stored. Spatial memory is the ability to recall something within a given space. For example, where you parked your car in the parking lot. General memory is the ability to recall an event, task, or situation that was previously completed. For example, what you had for dinner last night, or an event a month ago. The way we have previously reacted to all different types of situations is kept here. This is how we learn to respond when faced with a similar situation. Lastly, the amygdala. This is where our emotions come into play, like joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and worry. Have you ever had an event that to this day you can still see it as if it were yesterday? That's because the amygdala put it directly into our memory bank, the hippocampus. Our amygdala also can be what gets us into trouble. Have you ever had an argument and said something in the heat of the moment you wish you had not said? You probably didn't regret it until later when you had a chance to calm down and the prefrontal cortex was more in control and less of the amygdala. How are these three areas connected? How do messages get from one area to another? Through neural pathways. Neural pathways are the highways of our brain and how our brain communicates. Your brain has the ability to develop new neural pathways your entire life. This is important because as we age, we will require new pathways to retain abilities and/or memories. As we develop new coping techniques and experiences, these new pathways help us in decision making, which leads to improved stress management. Based on the situation, different channels and connections are made within our neural pathways. This can explain why people act and behave in a predictable way. For example, have you ever known a person who is always negative? This person has developed a neural pathway to respond negatively. The good news is that pathways can be altered with time and practice, giving us a new way of coping and reacting to situations. This video helps to summarize how chronic stress can affect our brains and how it slowly changes our daily lives.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
Now that we know a little more about how stress affects our brain, let's discuss some of the different types of stress in our lives. Stress can be caused by things happening internally or externally. External stress is caused by events outside of ourselves, such as things that happen due to others, the environment, or life situations. Internal stress is caused by our own thoughts and emotions, which are reactions to external stressors. For example, worrying, feeling jealous of someone, feeling anxious, blaming yourself, and feeling guilty or creating unrealistic expectations for yourself would be examples of internal stressors. It's how we internalize or react to stressors that make it stressful. We often react to both internal and external stressors automatically with a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. When we are experiencing fight, flight, or freeze reactions, the following processes take place. Cortisol, a stress hormone, increases, which limits access to the part of our brain that allows us to think rationally, our prefrontal cortex. Our blood flow is diverted to the muscles, heart, and brain from other organs, which gives us energy to run or fight. A brief fight, flight, or freeze reaction is a normal physiological response to stress and can happen anytime, even if the stressor isn't real, for example, a scary movie. However, internalizing stress or carrying the stress with you and letting it fester may cause short-term and long-term health problems. It's really our reactions to internalizing stress that are hard on us, not the stressor itself. Sometimes our thoughts, or internal stressors, make things worse than they actually are. Thoughts do not always reflect reality. However, these thoughts can be very powerful and can affect how we feel and what we do. Once triggered, thoughts can set off a cascade of other thoughts. Becoming aware that our thoughts are not necessarily reality can help us deal with tough situations that create those thoughts. When we have unrealistic thoughts, we are allowing our brain to create new neural pathways that can lead to increased anxiety and stress. Scientists estimate the average person has 50 to 60,000 thoughts per day. 95% of those thoughts are the same ones day after day, and 80% of repetitive thoughts are negative. Another stress-inducing experience is racing thoughts. Some experts use the Buddhist term monkey mind to refer to this. It's when your thoughts are jumping from one thing to the next, usually thinking about things from the past or concerns about the future. Has anyone ever experienced this, where your mind seems to have a life of its own? This is often most noticeable when we're trying to fall asleep and can't control our thoughts. Monkey mind can be exhausting. Use these 5 techniques to control monkey mind. Use your breath to tune in to the present moment. Stay in the moment and be conscious of the present. Be aware of your body sensations. assess thoughts, feelings, and perceived threats, and view situations with openness and without judgment. For many, time is a stressor. Time is relative to what we are doing. If we're doing something pleasurable, time goes by quickly. But if we are bored with what we're doing, we have too little to do, we're depressed or waiting anxiously for something, time seems to last forever. It's how we view time and what we do with it that makes the difference in whether we think we have too much or too little. Time affluence is a term used to describe a feeling that we have sufficient time to pursue activities that are personally meaningful. The opposite, time poverty, is a state of constantly stressed, rushed, overworked, and or behind. Having material affluence hasn't been proven to be a consistent indicator of well-being, but research shows that time affluence has. For those of us who feel we don't have enough time, perhaps the issue is that it's not more time we want, but rather more free time. How can we have more time off without taking time to get away on a multi-day vacation? Examples might be a picnic, spending the afternoon in the park, enjoying a hobby, or visiting with friends. One way to free ourselves of time constraints, even temporarily, is to learn how to absorb ourselves in the moment, to be present and fully engaged in the now. We can waste a lot of time worrying about the future, rehashing the past, stressing about whether we're getting enough done with what time we have, or thinking about how slowly time is moving by constantly checking the clock. These thoughts prevent us from being in the moment. They prevent us from truly being present or engaged in the now. We often think we do not have enough time to practice living in the moment because we are in a hurry to get something done. Try to be aware of what you're doing while you're doing it. For example, while you're eating, showering, driving, walking, working, pay attention to your breathing and your movement. When you feel exhausted, stop and ask yourself whether it aligns with your values, which we'll talk about in just a second. Set realistic expectations of what you can and cannot get done, and accept that non-perfection is acceptable. One of the best ways to learn how to live more in the moment is to take a little time each day away from doing to just be. Taking time to just be is another strategy to free ourselves from time stress. It's common in our culture to hold the belief that being busy is a sign of success and a source of pride. Some of us even feel guilty when we're not busy, so we find something to do to feel better about ourselves. We have become human doings instead of human beings. Just like we have to put gas in our cars to make them run, we have to fuel ourselves. So ask yourself, do the things I think I need to do really need to be done now? Like replying to an email, deep cleaning the house, or something else on your to-do list. We all deal with life stressors, whether it be from an internal or external stress or time management. What are the physical health problems caused by internalizing our stress? When we're stressed or when things are not going right, we often feel that we deserve a treat or indulge in something we enjoy. What unhealthy behaviors do we use to cope with stress? Are they helping you manage the stress or are they covering it up? Are they actually increasing the stress? These coping strategies may provide immediate gratification, but in the long run may worsen stress by making us feel guilty, causing the problem to grow by avoiding it, making us sick or so tired we can't do what we want or need to do. Many times they become habits we ultimately will want to change. Over time, these reactions and unhealthy ways of coping can lead to a physical breakdown of our bodies. These health challenges become internal stressors and make our worries worse. Remember that it is our reactions and how we internalize stress that is hard on our bodies, not just the stressor itself. We will always have some type of stress, but being aware may reduce its effect on us. What are some positive, healthy ways of coping with stress? If we use a positive means of coping, we are more likely to recover quickly from the stressor. This leads to feeling happier again sooner, and we are less likely to have illness or health problems caused by stress. One technique to use when we are in a stressful situation is to recall something that brings us joy. Remembering a happy memory releases in our brain the same feel-good chemicals that flooded the brain at the time of the actual experience. We can practice mindfully recalling favorite memories as a strategy to achieve a variety of goals: cultivating optimism, alleviating negativity, priming our brain for learning new material, generating ideas from past experiences, and boosting our physical health. Now we're going to talk about several qualities that can improve stress management. We will learn how these influence our lives and the lives of others around us. These qualities will provide a foundation for all other aspects of stress management. The first quality that we're going to discuss is values. What are values? Values are important and lasting beliefs or ideals shared by the members of a culture about what is good or bad and desirable or undesirable. Values strongly influence a person's behavior and attitude and serve as broad guidelines in all situations. There is a caveat that needs mentioning. Even though values are shared by a culture, someone can have values that are also in conflict with their culture. This, in and of itself, can be stressful. For instance, there are couples that are perfectly happy just being couples. They have no desire to have children. However, in many cultures, to be a productive member of society, the expectation is that there will be procreation to carry on the society. The key here is to still have awareness of our own values. What are some things that you value that are important to you? Some examples might be family, friendships, honesty, dependability, and work ethic. How does this relate to stress? Stress can often come from having to do things that we don't value, such as having to keep a secret or not being on time for work or an event. Stress can also be the result of not getting to do the things we do value, like spending time with friends and family or having the time to read a good book. Along with values, attitude will influence what we do and don't do. Attitude is a tendency to respond positively or negatively toward a certain idea, object, person, or situation. Attitude influences an individual's choice of action, and in turn, their responses to challenges, incentives, and rewards. The quote that the optimist thinks this is the best of all possible worlds, the pessimist fears it is true, really puts attitude into perspective. Having a positive attitude is a great example of how we can form a new neural pathway. Actively trying to have a positive attitude and practicing this can become habit forming. Gratitude is an emotion expressing appreciation for what you have, regardless of your situation. Deep gratitude has to come from within and in a meaningful way. Do you have gratitude for the things that bring you joy? For example, my family brings me joy, and I am also grateful for them. Why is it important to have gratitude? What happens to people who do not have gratitude? As Rick Foster and Greg Hicks share in their book, Happiness and Health, when we actively appreciate, the world feels right. We are calm and energized at the same time. This allows our parasympathetic nervous system to kick in, focusing on relaxing and restoring, the opposite function of fight or flight. Being in the state of deep gratitude is a surefire way to keep us rooted in the present. Gratitude is actually an antidote to stress. If you write down the things that bring you joy or the things for which you are grateful, you may notice you feel different. Recalling happy memories and feeling true appreciation for something can help us manage our stress in that moment. Research shows that visualizing yourself enjoying the items on your joy or gratitude list can actually reduce physical pain and increase hope. This next quality is one that also makes us think outside of ourselves. Excuse me. Empathy is the experience of understanding another person's thoughts, feelings, and condition from their point of view rather than from your own. Henry David Thoreau, a famous philosopher, once said, "Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant?" How does empathy relate to stress? When we give and receive empathy, we produce those feel-good chemicals in our brain, which creates a sense of trust and cooperation. This can be a positive outlet to rely on in difficult times. Leading with empathy can help those around us to be sources of support in our lives and vice versa, thereby reducing the likelihood of conflicts and more stress. This video is a great explanation of empathy. It's from a lecture given by Brené Brown, a world-renowned psychologist and expert on human emotion. While watching this video, take a minute to think about how you show empathy in your life.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, "I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed." And then we look and we say, "Hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone." Sympathy is, "Ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich?" Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
That's such a good video. Another critical quality to develop is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the intentional and voluntary process of changing your feelings and attitude regarding an offense by letting go of negative emotions such as revenge or punishment of the offender. Forgiveness is setting the prisoner free only to find out that the prisoner was me. That's from Corrie ten Boom. Forgiveness can be very painful for people to process. However, many expend an immense amount of energy holding a grudge or feeling vengeful towards someone. But we only hurt ourselves by holding a grudge. Sometimes those in need of forgiveness also include ourselves, which can be tougher than forgiving others. Forgiveness is not something you are doing for the other person, but for yourself. Think of a time that you forgave someone for something either small or large that they did, such as something your child, sibling, spouse, or friend did that upset you. How did you feel after you forgave that person? Now think of a time when someone like your parents or friend forgave you for something you did. Did they benefit from forgiving you? Did it help your relationship? Did the experience teach you anything? Forgiveness is not easy. It does not mean that you excuse or tolerate the offender's behavior. Forgiveness does not require reestablishing the relationship. Forgiveness is for you. It helps you grow from the situation and move on with your life. Another strategy for coping with stress or problems that are out of our control is that of being hopeful. Let's take a second and think about what hope means to us. Hope is not simply about being optimistic about the future. It's about being realistic, but open to pleasant surprises or a positive change. Sometimes we are in situations where we do not have options, or we feel that we don't have options, such as when a loved one dies or when we're diagnosed with a chronic illness. Being hopeful means that you are open to the possibility that a brighter future lies ahead, that you are open to something turning out better than you thought it could. In other words, when a situation seems hopeless, there is always room for the surprise of improvement. Being open to this allows for a hopeful reality. This hopeful reality may just become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think about this. Have you ever met a happy, hopeless person? Hope can be a powerful tool to get through tough situations. We may not have control over a situation, but we have control over our response. We always have options, even if we can't see them in our intense pain. Choosing to be hopeful is one response that will help you to deal better with the situation. Sometimes just having a little bit of hope can make us more resilient. What words come to mind when you hear the word resilient? Maybe strong, perseverance, steadfast, challenge, everlasting, withstanding, courage. Does it mean to never fail? No. Resiliency is the opposite of never failing. Resiliency is failing, but having the courage to get back up and try again. Now we're going to start the process of putting together all of the techniques we have learned. Look at the iceberg of health. This activity is going to help us take a look inside at our dimensions of health and how our state of health in these dimensions is helping or hurting us in managing our stress. As you can see, the only piece of the iceberg that is visible to onlookers is above the waterline. This is what we allow people to see. But it's everything under the water that makes us us and provides the reasoning behind why we do what we do. Have you ever wondered why it's so difficult to make lasting lifestyle changes? This iceberg model shows us how every aspect of your health is connected. It is difficult to change a lifestyle behavior without first digging deeper to find out what is causing you to struggle in adopting a behavior or what is drawing you to a less healthy lifestyle. The top layer is supported by the layers beneath. The first underwater layer represents our physical health, which is often a result of our genetics and our lifestyle behaviors. Eating and physical activity habits, stress relief, sleeping patterns, and substance use all play a role in our well-being. Our lifestyle behaviors most directly affect our physical health. Many of us struggle with managing a healthy lifestyle. Often we're initially successful when we try to change these lifestyle patterns, but eventually fall back into our old habits. Our mental health and social health are difficult to completely separate because they overlap in many ways. For example, having meaningful relationships with others can help us cope with our emotions better. Our mental health is a combination of our intellectual health and our emotional health. Intellectual health is the performance of mental functions or activities, such as reading, writing, learning new things, creating new ideas, solving problems, analyzing situations, or engaging in challenging mental activities. Emotional health is expressing emotions, coping with emotions in a healthy way, dealing with life's adversity or challenges, and having a positive attitude most of the time and a positive self-concept. And then social health is having fulfilling relationships with other people, having people to express emotions with, people to share life's joys and letdowns with, enjoying doing things with other people, listening to others and having others listen to you. If we are mentally healthy, we are more likely to be socially healthy. Social and emotional health support physical changes, social and emotional health support physical health changes you may want to make. And then lastly, spiritual health. This influences every layer above it. Often we think of religion when we think of spiritual health. Practicing a religion is a way to nurture our spiritual health, but there are many other ways as well. Spiritual health encompasses your absolutes, your core values. So defining what your values are and making every effort to align with them will support all other areas of your health. Life is all about choices, and how you respond or react to those choices affect your days, weeks, months, and years. We now have the tools to be aware of how we respond or react. I encourage each of you to make yourself a priority and take time for you. That wraps up our summer worksite wellness series with you all. Please take time to take the survey link and as always, reach out to Eden or myself if you have any questions about any of the material we covered, or if you have questions about any other nutrition, health, wellness related topic. Thank you for letting us be with you this summer, and we wish you the best of luck on your health journey.